Let's open our Bibles to Psalm 56 and let's read the Psalms together. Be merciful to me, O God, for man would swallow me up. Fighting all day, he oppresses me. My enemies would hound me all day, for there are many who fight against me, O Most High. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, I will praise His word. In God, I have put my trust. I will not fear what can flesh do to me. All day they twist my words. All their thoughts are against me for evil. They gather together, they hide, they mark my steps when they lie in wait for my life. Shall they escape by iniquity? In anger, cast down the people, O God. Verse 8. You number my wanderings, put my tears into your bottle. Are they not in your book? When I cry out to you, then my enemies will turn back. This I know because God is for me. In God I will praise His word. In the Lord I will praise His word. In God I have put my trust. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Amen. Vows made to you are binding upon me, O God. I will render praises to you, for you have delivered my soul from death. Have you not kept my feet from falling, that I may walk before God in the light of the living? Amen. This psalm is very familiar to us. We have read this psalm maybe a million times, and we all know the story behind the psalm. We all know this is the psalm of David. We know the situation when the psalm was written. David was trying to go away from King Saul because King Saul was trying to get hold of David. And what did he do? He ran and ran and ran and finally ended up in a city called Gath. And what's so special about this city? This is a Philistine city. And we all know David and Saul are enemies of Philistine as well. What do we see here? Here David is trying to flee from one enemy and he ends up in another trap. What I call it as a double trap. And why is that so? That's because he relied on his own understanding. That's because he had his own plans and he relied on it. He wanted to flee from Saul, but instead of looking to God, he had his own way of doing things. And finally, he ended up in a city of his enemies. That is called double trap. Trying to flee from one trap, but again falling into another trap. Trying to use our brains, trying to use our human thinking to escape from one obstacle or to find solution to one problem. Or what happens is we end up in another problem. But David realizes it. David understands that he has made a crazy mistake. He has done a crazy thing. And what does he do? Now he cries out to the Lord and he tells God and he expresses his feelings. And this psalm is all about the feelings that he expresses to God, the obstacles that he's facing, the oppression that he's facing, about the enemies. What does he say? Verse number 2, my enemies would hound me all day, for there are many who fight against me, O Most High. David is crying out to the Lord and explaining his situation. Verse number 5, all day they twist my words, all their thoughts are against me for evil. They gather together, they hide, they mark my steps when they lie in wait for my life. Shall they escape by iniquity? In anger cast down the peoples, oh God. Here David is crying out to the Lord and explaining God the situation that he is in right now. But he knows one thing, in midst of this trouble, that on one side he's scared of the two enemies that he has to face, but on the other side he knows the God that he serves. What does verse number 11 says? In God I have put my trust. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? There are two things that we need to do when we go through tough times. There are two things the psalmist here says that we need to do when we go through trials and tribulations. There are two things that God says that we need to do when we go through adverse circumstances. The first thing is verse number 11. In God I have put my trust, and as a result I will not be afraid. And what's the second thing? Verse number 12. I will render praises to you. Amen. Amen. In midst of the tough situations, can we render praises to God? In midst of tough circumstances, can we thank God for all that He has done in our lives? In midst of tough circumstances, can we say, Lord, thank you for all that you're doing in our lives? When the oceans roar, When the mountains tremble, what we do normally, we say, God, have you forgotten me? But in this worship session, I want to highlight on one thing. The God that we serve is not the God that forgets us. The God that we serve is a God that remembers us. And that's what we read in verse number 8. Every tear that we shed in the presence of God, He's storing it and He's making a note of it. He's not a God who forgets us. This evening, as we remain in the presence of God, just know one thing, that the God that we serve is a God that remembers us. Let's all close our eyes in the presence of God once again. And let's say to the Lord, Lord, many times when I went through tough situations, I murmured against you. Many times when I went through tough situations, I forgot that you were there for me. But this evening I realized that you're a God who remembers us. Church, let me tell you one thing. When God remembers us, change is inevitable. When God remembers us, those who mocked you will bow before you. When God remembers us, the tears will turn into joy. When God remembers us, sorrows will turn into joy. How many of us can believe it? How many of us can say amen to it this evening? Worship is not about songs. Worship is about encountering the presence of God. There's no point of singing many songs or listening to the word if you're not able to encounter the presence of God. Lord, this evening as we remain in the presence of God, can we say, Lord, this evening I realize, Lord, that you're a God who remembers us, because you're a God who remembered Sarah. You're a God who remembered Hannah. You're a God who remembered Rebecca. You're a God who remembered Abraham. And the same God is a God who will remember me in midst of my tough situations, Jesus. No matter what season of life that you go through, how many of us can say, Lord, you are enough for me. I do not want anything else. I don't care what else is there for me, but all that I need is you, Jesus. Christ, you are enough for me. How many of us can say, Lord, you're all that I want, Jesus? Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. God is an awesome